All right, this is part two of a two-part series that I'm going to upload. So if you miss part one, go back and watch that. Like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of these uploads and series that I'm doing. And for the record, part two of this build here is coming up. So let me say this again though, for those in the back. I'm not saying that salt test is all bad. I'm just saying that the majority of us won't need it. Even I didn't need it. Let's take this example here. This was a bad area right here. The grass stopped growing. But when I dug a hole, it was a grub problem that I had. Grubs is the reason why this wasn't growing. I had another area where it wasn't growing, and then when I stuck the shovel down off in it, and guess what? It was actually a sprinkler valve there. One of the things that the soil test will give you is your pH, which is like, it was pretty important because my pH was preventing my lawn from getting uptaking the nutrients like it should. But I didn't need a soil test for that. I just went and picked up one of those soil test probes like this right here, put that in there, and it told me that I had a high pH. And also when dealing with a soil test, here's the deal. The nutrients in your lawn, depending on what time of the year it is, when you take a soil test, it is like a gas tank. The nutrients in your lawn just don't sit there. It's being used up consistently by the tank, by the grass. And, you know, if your nitrogen is low, it's just that your grass has been using it. I mean, but we know to add nitrogen. So when other parts of the nutrients level goes up and down because the grass is using it. So you get a soil test today, right after you fertilize, and your nitrogen levels may read high. Well, you just fertilized. Or you fertilized 6 months ago or a year ago or didn't fertilize at all, and then your soil test reads low. It don't take rocket science for that. You know that it has been, you haven't added anything to the lawn. You're not doing anything to add organic matter or nitrogen to the lawn. So yes, your nitrogen levels can be low. And my one last point about the soil test. Look, you see all that over there? That's an entire ecosystem that's going on over there. It constantly is revitalizing itself. All of those trees, none of those trees are evergreen. There's a walkway behind that in which you will be able to see in the wintertime once all the leaves fall off. And there's all kinds of weeds out there. Every weed that's imaginable is out there. One thing I bet you didn't know is a lot of the weeds that we call weeds, like clover, for example, it hoards nitrogen. It holds on to it. And when it dies, it disperses the nitrogen into the soil. It's revitalizing the soil. Same with crabgrass or any perennial weed. Those weeds, they grow up during the growing season, they drop their seeds and then they die. Well, when they die, that decaying matter is going back into the soil as nitrogen, ready for the next seedlings to use to come back up. That's the entire ecosystem that's going on over there. So they don't need fertilizers. That's none of those plants that are healthy and everything. They don't need fertilizers because it's recycling itself. So the nitrogen content, if I would go and get a soil test, the nitrogen content over there might be pretty high because it's constantly being recycled into the soil. All those leaves right there fall off and they don't nobody bags them. Where does it go? They go back into the soil. The organisms and the worms and all of that eat all of that, and it's taking the nitrogen in the leaves and everything and putting it back into the soil. So when you have a lawn that you never done anything to, and you go get a soil test to it, and you find out that, hey, my nitrogen level is high or optimal and you never fertilize, well, that's because the weeds, the prior weeds that were down there that have died home, have left the nitrogen in the soil for the next batch of weeds to come back up. So your soil test is going to read that. Anyway, sorry for the long rant. My advice, skip the soil test, do all the other tests, do everything else. And after all of that is done, then I will spend the money for a soil test.